Good evening, everyone. It's 7:05 on Tuesday, January 18th, for the Hingham Board of Selectmen meeting. And I'm going to take a little liberty with the agenda this evening to start out first with item number 2, which is the report on the town administrator evaluation. And I should report back to the public that on Friday last, we had an open session where we discussed, as we are required by town law, to do a public evaluation of our town administrator. And as you may recall, some time ago, we had come up with 6 criteria. And Bob, if I could ask you to focus the camera on the 6 criteria for the public to see, and the 6 areas that our interim town administrator was to be evaluated on. And we agreed at the time that we would do that over once per quarter. And we sat down this past Friday to do that evaluation. And I should point at the public meeting that we had a representative of the citizenry there as well, and of course it couldn't have been anybody better than Bob Falvey. So Bob represented
the whole town.
The whole town, as he does under normal circumstances anyway. So you can see the 6 areas that we went through, and I won't go through the hour or so discussion that we had, but the way we did it was we went around the table with each of us voicing our opinions and sharing our current experiences, evaluating Ted on the deliverables, and as you can see, there were many. There were some that the time hadn't come yet, so we decided not to comment on those. But then once we had done that and shared our collective opinions, we focused on the good things, and particularly in the area of operations and issues management and communicating with us and keeping us advised, and quite frankly taking a lot of the burden that over the past couple of years we perhaps had to insert ourselves on. And then I think the bright part of the discussion was dealing with the personnel matters that some people had thought that Ted may not have addressed as well as he could have in the past, but how well he has dealt with those issues. And if I could maybe summarize some of the comments that I picked up from my peers, we said he listens, that he solicits input, that he uses, as he always has, sound judgment. But I should hasten to add, we editorialized a little bit in saying that the world, according to Ted, has changed a little bit, and we jokingly refer to it that Ted is certainly a different person. He is gracious in his comments to others. He has been extremely receptive to the coaching that each of us has given to him. He continues, as he has always done, to work hard at what he does. And one of the suggestions that we had made to him collectively was that he should go back to school, and he did. So we were very, very pleased, needless to say. And Laura brought up the issue of, we know what we have, and we're very pleased with what we have. And he has done well for us, and we're very proud of what he has done for us. And also reminded us that we had recently been through a series of searches, and we read the newspapers as others do, and we had a pretty good sense of the talent that was out there, and we're very, very, very proud of the talent that we have, and in the long years that Ted has served us. So, in order to anticipate an action that what I think we're going to take this evening, I thought at first I should introduce you this evening to Ted's wife, Angela, and his daughter, Abigail, who are sitting in the front of this evening, and we welcome you to tonight's meeting. I would, before I make a motion, I would open it up for comments from my peers if they have anything they'd like to add to my introductory remarks, Mr.
Well, I think that you've probably told the majority of, I think, what we discussed last Friday, which was that Ted has shown himself to be a person of integrity as well as, number one, likable. I think that's important to have a person who's a likable person who, in many ways, is going to represent the town with issues before they get to the Board of Selectmen. I think his 16 years as Chief Financial Officer has certainly prepared him to take this next step as Town Administrator. Having my own business and being in business as long as I have, I'm of the opinion, if you understand the finances of your business or your own home, then you understand what's really going on within. And I believe that Ted has that ability to understand. Although he might not know everybody personally, he understands how it all works, and I think that's really to the town's benefit. I think that at times when asked for opinions, Ted is quick to evaluate and look at a situation or an issue in a way that allows him to make comment in a suggestive way without being trying to impose himself. I think he gives that that ability to think of things in ways that one might not have thought of. So with that, I would just like to pass it on to my colleague, Laura.
Well, yeah, you did cover the waterfront there pretty well, but I would just say that those who've been following the question of what to do about our town administrator position since the departure of the previous town administrator know that I had some misgivings at the time of the appointment for interim town administrator, and I felt that we might be better off hiring someone from outside to do that job. When we did make the appointment, I was hoping very much that my misgivings would prove groundless, and they have. And Ted has exceeded my wildest expectations so far, and it just gives me great pleasure to have been wrong about that. So it's been a great pleasure working with Ted so far, and I look forward to doing so in the future.
Thank you. Thank you both. I should have mentioned that, lest you think that we just talk to each other, we did go out individually and talk with some of the department heads, all of the department heads, and we did talk with many of our citizens, some of whom had called me in anticipation of the evaluation, and we got input from them as well. And I think, Laura or John, correct me, I think the lowest grade he got was a B+ from some folks. So that's a pretty good, where I went to school, that was pretty good. So I would be very happy to entertain a motion to appoint Theodore Alexiadis, the town administrator for Hingham, pending successful contract negotiations.
So moved.
And I'll second that.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Wow. That has never happened. That's right. So I'll make a motion that we order new stationery, and in view of all the kind words, I'll have to get a carpenter in to expand, as the British used to say, when raise the lintel or raise the door jambs, because you certainly have been worthy of our comments. So congratulations on behalf of all of us, and we all look forward to working with you over the next few months. So thank you. I understand the press would like to take just a brief few minutes, if we could take a momentary break and take some pictures for the evening. So Bob, could I ask you to just hold it for a second? And I thank you one and all. Thank you. Thank you. We're back again. We had our little picture-taking exercise and some celebration and some good comments. So once again, welcome, Ted.
Thank you.
Again. So we'll start the process. I want to share with my peers that I took the liberty of calling town council this morning and asking him to get a draft going on a contract. And Ted, we would welcome, obviously, we would like, if you would give Jim Toomey some input on that area. We'll come back and report on that publicly. So I'd like now to call to order the meeting again and entertain any questions from the public. There being none, we had some minutes to approve. Were there any comments to the minutes of November 30th, December 7th, 9th, 14th, 16th, and January 4th? Everybody? Okay, could I have a motion to approve those?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of 11:30, 12:07, 12:09, 12:14, 12:16 of 010, and January 4th of 11.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Good. We have some other items on the agenda. Tonight, we're going to talk about the intermodal transportation center and as submitted to us by the MBTA. We'll talk about the Cable Television Committee, and in that vein, we'll be addressing the issue of directors for the new Public Access Corporation and some of the bylaws that will govern the Public Access Corporation. There will be a further discussion on the Hersey House with a request for proposal on the timeline for those proposals. The harbor master will come in and give us an update on the mooring plan for the yacht club area and discuss with us his own goals for harbor development. And then, as you may have heard, we have a planning board vacancy with the resignation of Susan Murphy to take on her role as one of her new roles as an attorney for real estate issues for the town. As you also saw, may have seen in the paper, there is the announcement of a planned retirement for our police chief, and then a discussion on the date for our proposed economic forum in February, and then our usual reports. So, if I may start the discussion on the next item on the agenda, which is the Intermodal Transportation Center, which is, we are in receipt of a December 22nd correspondence from the Secretary Ian A. Bowles of the, and Christine Gorman, the project manager from his office, that deals with the proposal to design and construct a new intermodal center at the Hingham shipyard site, and that will relocate the office personnel and facilities in the existing outdated building known as Building 45, currently located at that site. And the new building will include new ferry and bus terminal facilities and office space, and Building 45 will continue to be used for boat maintenance activities. There is a schematic of that, if I could put this up for the public to see. You got it, thank you. And I would welcome if there are, thank you, Laura. I would welcome if there are any comments to be, that anyone has on the proposed facility so that we can direct the town administrator or interim to respond to the secretary. So, Mr. Riley, any?
No, only maybe that I feel that this is a step in the right direction with respect to the progress of the shipyard being totally rehabbed. Is my understanding at some point in time looking at this building from the MBTA parking lot to the right, there's going to be a large park that's going to be constructed there as part of review that we did when I was on the planning board. And that's going to be a very welcome site as well. So I think this is one step further to the completion of the Hingham shipyard as we know it.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Laura, any?
It's nice to, this looks a little more developed than it did the last time they came to us, just the picture here. I don't remember having such a good visual impression of what the building is going to look like. What is the response that's being asked for from the Board of Selectmen?
If you have any comments on the project, this is the comment period, and your comments are due
January 22nd?
January 22nd.
January 22nd. And the planning board is also a recipient of the ENF as required by law. And they are also going to be supplying their comments. So I wanted to give the board an opportunity, if you have any comments, to make them. I will coordinate with the planning board, Katie Lacy, community planning director, and with our harbor master to make sure that all of their comments are included.
The Boston Globe had called me, if I may just interrupt, and the purpose of this is really to have a facility that can accommodate not just the ferry service, which is its principal, but also to bring together the other forms of transportation that will be in the area. Is that right?
Along with a space for our harbor master.
With the harbor master as well. Okay. Okay, any, so I got John, Laura, anything else?
My comment is, I like it.
Okay. Let's,
Can I ask you? Ted, do you know if, in fact, there's going to be office space as well as a docking space for the harbor master? Yes.
I know there's office space. I wasn't sure about the docking issue.
Yeah, because I know that we were paying a fairly large sum of money for the docking privileges at the marina, so I thought maybe
Right.
that would be helpful.
Maybe we should ask about that, because an office for the harbor master doesn't do much for us without a dock.
Without a dock. And the space that we were leasing was
About $6,000.
$6,000 a year, so this would be a good thing if we could get this first part of our
Yeah, that's, I
facility.
don't know if anybody's thought of that.
Like I said, I can't
Oh, I
confirm
bet
whether
Ken-
it is or it isn't. I know it's office space, because I've been talking with Ken, our harbor master, about the office space
he'll
and the
be,
outline
he'll
of
be
it.
here in an hour.
I'm sure he can
so
answer
we
that
can
question.
answer that, all right?
But I will make sure that the comment includes support for that.
It's, Okay, any other comments? Any comments from the public on this?
It says that the shipyard is owned by DCR?
Just this part of it,
The
This
site,
part, this
this
part.
particular
the
site.
part they're building on.
Part, yeah.
Sorry, Ted, you said you're gonna collaborate with planning, with Katie and the harbor master, did you say?
I want to make sure the harbor master's comments are included.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, any other questions or comments? I guess we'll wait till you collect the response, and I assume you'll get us a document that we can vote on.
No, actually, this is your last meeting
Is it?
before
Till
voting,
then.
so I just needed to get a sense of your comments and if you had anything specific
No, I
to
think we'll get
include.
that one question that John raised
Yep.
answered, so we're fine, and I'll take Laura's comment. I like it. That's a good thing. As someone who used to go to that facility for a few years, it's nice to be able to have a place to stand and get warm, so that's a good thing. Okay. The next item on our agenda this evening is the Cable Television Committee, which I think we started in about 1843. And we are at the, coming to the end of our process here, which deals with the bylaws that will govern this public access corporation, and then we will be appointing 5 directors. And we have in front of us this evening Sandy and Jim, who have come from the cable group. So,
Yes.
Sandy, if I was going to read through some highlights of the law, but maybe you could just, you could do that? I don't think we need to spend a lot of time on that. We've had a lot of discussion, but if there's anything in
Right.
particular.
And you've already addressed the bylaws and the articles of incorporation once,
Right.
so in some detail. So this is just some little housekeeping changes that the attorney has suggested in both the bylaws and the articles of incorporation, articles of organization, I guess it is, and relating to amendments to the bylaws and the the requirement that the members approve any amendments that the directors make. So the directors can amend the bylaws, but then they have to get the approval of the members at the next meeting or a special meeting if they prefer. So that's all clarified, and he's made sure that the articles of organization match the words in the bylaws, and that's the only change that's in the documents that you have, with the exception of you have to fill in the names and addresses of the directors, which nobody knows yet. So we're waiting.
But we
that.
have some ideas.
And then there is a motion, also drafted by the attorney, adopting the articles of organization and bylaws. And I made sure that Betty had those this afternoon, so I believe you have that motion in front of you as well.
So,
And then the Cable Committee has a couple of really sort of housekeeping financial things to ask. We're recommending, and this is a figure I got from the lawyer, that when you establish the corporation, which it looks like you might do tonight, that you authorize $5,000 of the cable funds to be transferred to them pretty much immediately, as soon as they have a treasurer and a bank account, for their use in preparing and filing the application for a 501c3 corporation and their filing fees with the state and the preparation of the filing documents with the state, also housekeeping sorts of things. And the lawyer believes that $5,000 should cover the cost of preparing the documents as well as all the filing fees that are associated with it. So as you'll recall, you've looked at once, and once the corporation is established, we'll look at in more detail again a draft of an agreement between the town and the corporation for the transfer of some larger amounts of money to enable the corporation to provide public access and to assist with the government access and buy equipment and such. And in that vein, the committee has been talking to the library about space for the training that will be one of the requirements. It is one of the requirements in the Comcast agreement, and that's coming up pretty quickly. It has to be in place by this August. And the library has some space that can be used for training, and we've also talked to the adult education branch of the community center about having some training classes as being part of their program as well. But to do that, we need a little bit more equipment, about $3,000 worth of cameras, hard drives, camcorders, and external drive, that's a hard drive, and SD cards. And if you want to know what any of those are, Jim Dellett is sitting next to me, and he can explain anything technical. So these are the items for tonight that the Cable Committee has for you.
if I may, Sandy, when you use, under the new corporation, when it uses town facilities, are the facilities compensated for?
They can be compensated, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. They can rent space in the library, they can rent space at town hall, they can rent space in any other building, such as, for example, that lovely building on Main Street.
Tree and Parks?
Tree and Parks that we've been looking at. Yes, they can pay the town market value rent for any space belonging to the town that's used, and the town can use that rental money for any purpose it wants.
So, I mean, we're having a library trustees meeting tomorrow, so I would discuss with them. I'll make sure this issue gets addressed tomorrow, so we at least clear the air, understand what they might be thinking. So
Okay,
we'll get
good.
input from them. So
Good. the cable committee, I can't speak for the new corporation, but the cable committee is very enthusiastic about trying to establish a partnership with the library, because it just there seems to be a fit.
There is.
The library has lots of things going on that the public could really benefit from if they were broadcast on the public access cable channel, and the library, at least Dennis Corcoran, is very much interested in trying to work with the cable people to make that happen.
Thank you. Any questions from my peers?
Yeah, I only have one. I had missed a couple of your meetings when you were discussing the creation of all of this. And one thing that I'd like to know is, are you planning on finding a permanent home somewhere? I know you had mentioned the tree and park, and that has been, discussed in the past. Is there any other place other than the library that, or is the library going to be your chief base of operation?
That will be up to the board of directors of the new corporation to really get into this in detail. We looked for a place where we could start the training, because that seemed to be something that has to happen before we can have residents providing content. They've got to learn how to do it. And also, we have this deadline coming up that's in the franchise that we have to have the training established and going by later this year. So we've started work on that, and that doesn't take as much space as something, as a building that would house the entire operation. So that will probably be something that the corporation board of directors will start looking at pretty quickly once they get organized.
And hopefully it's going to be a Hingham facility then.
Pardon?
I say hopefully it will be a Hingham facility.
That's definitely the hope of everyone who's been involved with this so far, yes.
Town property?
The town property. Town property. hopefully.
Town property, if that can be found, yes, that would be ideal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Laura?
I don't have any questions about the bylaws. We went over it in great depth the last time you were here, so we, John wasn't here, but we had the opportunity to go over it. I'd like to thank the Cable TV Committee for all the work that you've done to get us to this point. I feel like we're at a jumping off place of something really exciting. And talking with the two folks who we didn't know, who you had suggested for the directors, they bring in such great expertise, and it will be nice to have some new energy around it, and so I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you. Were we going to be addressing the contract?
Not tonight.
Not tonight? Okay.
No,
I thought we would.
it seems to me that the new board of directors should have a chance to look at it.
Oh, I
and
guess so.
Have their input.
Didn't think of that, yeah, okay. All right. So that would be the reason why we would need to make these appropriations right now.
Right, the small
Okay.
appropriations right now to
Okay, I get it.
get the
Get it going.
corporation going.
Some seed money. Okay.
Then the agreement will have to come up pretty quickly,
Yeah.
but not urgently.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so it sounds like we need to vote first on the contract.
No,
No, not a
the
contract.
bylaws,
The bylaws,
bylaws.
I'm sorry, the bylaws, my.
the directors.
In fact,
And then the money, right, we give, or the directors and then the money?
the directors before the money. The directors have to be named in the articles of organization. Their names and addresses
Oh,
will
so
have
we
to be
need to do that.
inserted.
So we
that,
need-
that and the bylaws are attached to the articles of organization when they're filed with the state. So that's the package. And this one-page motion that
We have.
the
You have
the
that
attorney
in yours.
drafted
We have that
does all of that. It approves the formation and adopts the, authorizes the bylaws, approves everything.
You have that in your.
Yes, we do. I see that. Okay, that's clear. Do you know the answer to that, Dennis? I thought he did.
I think so.
Yeah. There's one of the members whose name is being put forth, he sits on another committee. And has he agreed to step down off that other committee?
I have not confirmed that.
It'd be,
Yeah.
I'm unaware of whether or not he is agreed to that. I haven't spoken to him.
Perhaps we should hold that back and
Does that?
check with him, because
Yeah, I just want to be sure.
there would be only
There
four.
Four.
We
There's-
don't have 5 without him.
Okay.
Now,
Well, let us, let's see.
if you want to wait and confirm that, but you want to actually get this all done today, the 5 directors that are named in the Articles of Organization do not have to remain as permanent directors. We've set it up with the intention that they do that, but if you want to name like a holding person who will agree to step down as soon as you have the information so that this other person can be appointed in place, that could be done tonight.
Well, or we could simply appoint the person, and if he decides he'd rather serve on the other committee,
Right, then he could step down.
That's all, I think
Excellent.
that might make more sense.
That's
That
right.
makes sense,
And then
yes.
we'll keep that name private till we work that through. Okay. So what, so I'll entertain a motion to appoint the directors of the cable.
well, I think we gotta do the bylaws first, that's what she just said.
No, I think we have to do the appointments first, so we can put their names in the bylaws, and then that's what I heard Sandy say, right? You need the names in the bylaws,
Well, it
right?
all kind of needs to happen at once, and I don't think it matters a whole lot whether you do it.
Whatever order,
Whatever order you want to do it will work.
whatever. I'm just trying to make.
Whatever
life
logic
I want to
works
make
for
life
you.
difficult. That's part of my New Year's
As long as it
resolution.
all happens tonight.
Okay, it's
Okay.
going to happen.
I'll make a motion to approve the bylaws of the Hingham Community Access and Media Incorporated, as written.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. I'll move to appoint the following directors for the Hingham Cable Access Corporation: Jim Dellett, Noreen Moras, Margie Sullivan, Rob Kirk, and Hal Goldstein.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye. And, do you want me to read
Have
this?
to- You have
Has
to
to
approve
read
this
this?
motion.
When you said as written, I thought you meant,
No, I was referring to
You
the
did the
bylaws.
bylaws.
okay, I'll do this one.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen, as the cable television license issuing authority of the town of Hingham, hereby approves the formation of a private, nonprofit, charitable, public educational government access corporation, PEG, to continue operation of local PEG access, community television, and related services as contemplated by the cable television renewal license between the Board of Selectmen and Comcast, and the cable television license between the Board of Selectmen and Verizon, and ratifies the formation of said nonprofit PEG Access Corporation as designated in the Articles of Organization to be filed with the Secretary of the Commonwealth attached hereto as Exhibit 1, and as set forth in the bylaws for such corporation attached hereto as Exhibit 2. The authorization of this independent, private, nonprofit corporation as set forth in the attached Articles of Organization is subject to the corporation's initial board of directors in their capacity as incorporators diligently adopting said Articles of Organization and bylaws and applying for and receiving tax-exempt status subject to and in accordance with Section 501c3 of the Internal Revenue Code.
Second.
Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye. And we're off and running.
We're off and running.
Okay?
Now, your financial,
Right. We would like to ask the Board of Selectmen to authorize the prompt transfer of $5,000 to the new just-formed corporation for the purpose of having some startup costs to make the requisite filings with government agencies and hiring an attorney to prepare those filings, attorney or other person as necessary. And we've been informed that $5,000 should cover that, and so we would ask the Board of Selectmen to approve that.
and shall we just tack on the other request for $3,000?
And the other, for
Startup
$3,000,
equipment for training?
yes,
Is
$3,000.
that okay if we
Surely.
put that together?
And that would come from the cable funds.
Okay, so move.
We'll make a motion to approve through the Board of Selectmen the amount of $8,000 for the preparation of filing fees in the hiring of attorney for the filing fees for 501c corporation, as well as additional equipment and training.
Second.
Any further discussion or comment? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I am big sigh of relief.
This is the fastest cable TV meeting we ever did.
It is indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank you.
on behalf of us all. Okay. You're moving right along.
Yeah, we're moving right along here.
7:45.
We have one other vote that we could take before moving to the next agenda item.
I'll move to grant a temporary liquor license to Martha Whitman for a party on February 5th at the South Shore Conservatory.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Speaking of February 5th, I just want to get out there that that's the Lincoln Day celebration, which will be February 5th. And we'll be talking more about that in the upcoming weeks, but people might want to put that on their calendar. Okay.
We also have Lincoln Day in February also, don't we? Is that-
Yes.
Yes.
Is that February? Not sure what it's the first Saturday in February,
That's
is it
February
not?
5th.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the
Which you just referred to.
Lincoln Day,
Lincoln Day,
11 o'clock.
11 o'clock on the 5th of February.
Correct.
So, put that down. Very good. I think, is there anyone here for the Hersey House?
Well, he might not come for 15 minutes, you don't
Yeah.
know, so.
Yeah, so.
We could do
are there
town
any-
administrator reports.
Yeah, you want to do the town administrator, no more interim report?
I do not have one for this meeting.
But you have some things you'd like to fill us in on, sir.
Almost everything that I want to fill you in on is on your agenda. The minor points that I would put in a report are, I've spoken to each of you about, and I will have something formal for you for your next meeting and every subsequent one.
About the limousine license issue, is that something we can talk about?
Sure. As you know, we have been working on licensing our limousines and limousine services, and Betty's been working on it with Marilyn, and I'd really ask her to comment, and I could add in if she would like.
Currently, we have one pending limousine license. There are no other licensed limousine services in town. Previously, the Selectmen had interviewed every driver for every limousine company, which seemed rather onerous to the person who was applying, and he brought it to our attention. It's a lot of people coming in to meet with the Selectmen individually, whereas you may choose to simply interview the owner of the business and then rely on the Cory checks for the individual drivers. Part of the limousine licensing process is to run a Cory check on every driver, and then the police department checks the vehicles to make sure they're safe and so forth.
It's important to note that no limousine service can operate in the town, regardless of where they're located. They cannot pick up passengers in the town of Hingham without that license. And, you know,
Of
we
course,
know
they do.
they do, and we need to work a little bit on that. We also have a request from our Department of Elder Services Director to explore a taxi license for the town, which we do not have. We don't have any taxis licensed to operate in the town, and it's becoming an increasingly in-demand service, and you are the regulatory board to ensure that, you know, our residents are protected. So we were proposing something slightly different because we don't think it's practical, as Betty has said, to have you interview every single driver, and these companies rotate quite a bit, so.
You had mentioned that the limo service has to have a license within the town in order to operate or do pickups. Is that true throughout the state? Does that mean the limousine service has to, if they decide to do pickup service in 351 towns, they have to go to 351 towns and
It would depend on the individual towns. Not all towns have licensing requirements, but if you do, then they would have to.
So we've got a limousine, if I'm hearing you right, you're saying we have limousines operating today that may not have come to our attention as,
Well, actually, in full disclosure, I'll tell you that one of the limousine service companies who talked to us about this actually proposed a version of the recommended changes that Betty and I have put forth in front of you. And like we said, we're modeling it similar to what you do with your liquor establishments. You do not interview every bartender. You interview the manager, and the manager's responsible to interview their staff and make sure their staff is trained and accountable. And I think the same thing would apply here. We will query check every driver, but we will require the staff to make sure they understand, or the management to understand that they have to train their staff if they're going to be doing business in the town.
so,
I'm just a little bit curious how, if a person were to decide to go into a limousine business service, how they would know that that would be a requirement throughout the state, that they would need to go to each individual town to find out if there was a requirement as such.
Virtually every city and town in the country has a licensing requirement for any taxi or livery service, and those in the business know that. But unless you, for example, if they operate in the city of Boston, they know that very well. They can't get a license to operate a taxi or a limousine service without the city's approval. It tends to, as you move out in the suburbs, be less known or less watched. But there are some reasons for making sure that our residents are, being served by an entity that is following laws and regulations appropriately. Limousine services, taxi services are frequently dealing with our residents one-on-one, a lot of times at their home. The nature of the folks that use the services sometimes, require a little bit more care.
Okay, sure.
okay, do we have to make a vote on this? It's
No,
not on a voting list?
It's something that we will be bringing to you formally at some point in time. We wanted to include it with you and show you what we were thinking about and get your comment. We do not have a formal selectmen's policy on this, and we wanted to get your input before we made one.
I'd just like to ask about the suggestion for the taxi service. When the Elder Services Department suggested this, did they have someone in mind?
No.
Well,
No, just the fact that there's a demand.
Okay, I
and they're
just would
seeing
like to mention that we did have an application for that a year ago, that nothing ever happened with.
No, I think that was a limousine.
No, I think it was a taxi.
Actually, we've had an application within the past month or so for a taxi service, and that's what brought it to my attention
Okay.
this time.
Okay. Well, I felt bad for the applicant, the person who wanted to apply a year ago, because it fell through the cracks. So I don't know if we have a record of that application.
I will check.
But it sounds like we need to get I see limousines in town all the time. So how do we enforce this? Is there,
The police department will enforce this, and we've discussed a number of ways of communicating with the entities that are operating within the town in a way that we don't disturb necessarily initially the activities that are going on, but let them know that, future activities, it's important for them to be licensed.
I think that it might not hurt, I think the main area where we might be concerned would be all the limousines that pick kids up at prom time. And it might not hurt to put some word out through the school department to parents about
I mean, we
this.
can do these.
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Parents on the
Betty
task.
and I have been brainstorming those ideas.
Okay.
Okay, we'll let you come back to us and
Sure.
advise us at a future date. Well, thank you for bringing it to our attention. And I know the press will do a good job of telling all those taxi drivers we have a,
I didn't hear a conversation between Holly.
oh, okay. All
It's
right.
coming back.
It's coming back, so we'll catch it. Okay. We had some unscheduled items, which I think we can deal with, and I see the chairman of the planning board is in the back of the room. So, as we announced earlier in the evening, that we do have a vacancy on the planning board, And Paul, you're here to discuss with us the process. This is a joint appointment, and I'm inviting the chairman, Paul Healy, to come on up and he and I had some conversation privately over the weekend, and so we'd maybe share that. Mr.
Evening,
Healy,
everyone.
nice to have you with us. So,
Basically, we all know now that Susan Murphy resigned her position from the planning board last Monday night. And the nature of what we do, I think, is best served by a 5-member committee or board. So what we'd request is that there be an interim appointment pending the election in April. And John knows because he and I have done this several times before, but basically the selectmen get together with the planning board, we interview interested candidates, and then we take a vote. Pretty simple. It's pretty straightforward stuff. But we think that we should fill this position now rather than wait.
okay. So this would be an idea that we solicit applicants who may be interested this evening to
Yes.
file notice with the chairman of the planning board. Is that where it should start? You folks screen first?
I would think that if people are interested in being considered for the position, submit some kind of letter of interest with a resume or a CV, something like that. They can send it to Katie Lacey or to Betty. To me, it doesn't make any difference as long as it gets to us at some point. They come up, we do the interviews, and then we decide.
Okay.
Take one.
Should we discuss an end date as to when the application should be in by, Paul?
Well, I really don't want this to linger. I want to get it out there. I mean, we are going into the zoning hearings, which, I mean, those were Susan's favorite items, but I will confess, not mine.
You're looking for somebody who likes zoning
Misery
articles?
loves company, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So the sooner we can get this done, the better it'll be for the planning board, I think.
The board's next scheduled meeting is February 1st.
So by January 31st? Is that
Yeah.
a reason? That's 2 weeks?
Or, I was gonna say, if they were in by Friday, the
Yeah.
28th,
The 28th? Okay,
time to distribute them to everyone.
sure.
And maybe schedule people
And then we can schedule people
Yes,
on
for
Monday.
the first.
For the first.
So when they submit their thing, they would know that we'd be interviewing on the first, so they could set that aside.
Yeah, the last time
To be in public.
we had the interviews, I think we had like 3 or 4 people, 5 or 10 minutes each. It's pretty straightforward stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, that sounds good, thank you.
Great,
Okay,
thank
we've
you.
got a
Thank you.
process. Thanks, we'll do that, okay. We have a few minutes before the Hersey House discussion. Ted, I understand you're in receipt of a letter from our police chief that made the press last week, and perhaps you could share with the public what the content of the letter and...
Sure. Our police chief, Taylor Mills, has indicated his intention to retire after a long, illustrious career between the months of April 30th and June 30th. The reason for the time period as opposed to a specific day is Tab is, as you'd expect from having worked with him so long, he is extremely desirous of making sure that the regional dispatch center is completed before he finishes his career. And we are targeting that time period for it to take place.
So the expectation with respect to the center is when?
Right now, our target date is to be effective sometime in the latter part of June. We probably will open up with one town, Hingham, sometime in that June period, and then start phasing in other towns in 1 to 2 week increments, because we have to actually do a physical 911 switchover. So when you dial 911 from your home, instead of going to one building, it's now going to go to another building, and that takes some time to process through and then bring the personnel over and then train them. So the implementation will be as of today, over the months of June and July.
I thought it was April. Is that,
Well,
slip?
we'll be bringing people in for training, but the training and the go live are two different issues.
Okay.
We can train them, but when they're being trained, the calls are still going to Norwell, Hull, and Cohasset. When we actually bring them in live, that's when we have a very tight time frame with a lot of very specific deadlines, and we met with the 911 coordinators at our meeting last Thursday, and they gave us that time schedule, which is going to be driven by them to some extent. So one town in, and then other towns in week to 2 week increments. And we will avoid the July 4th holiday weekend. We're not going to go live on that weekend.
Can we take this opportunity, can you give us an update as to the progress of the construction at the center?
Everything's going well. We are going to be lifting, I believe tomorrow, we'll be lifting the HVAC unit. If you recall, we had some issues with the location of that unit and how it would look in the neighborhood. And I have to say that the work of our owner's project manager, Kevin Bullman, and the architect, Gene Raymond, they've been able to design it so it's moved further back on the building and less visual impact from the street. And that's a big part of the construction process that will be going on today. We expect the construction will conclude, we originally thought early part of January. Now it's probably going to be early part of February. But it's moving along very well, and a lot of the equipment is going to start to get ordered. We will be ordering the antenna array very shortly. We're waiting back to see what the visual will be on the antenna array from a variety of the bidders, and that'll be significant to our selection. We made it very clear that we want to see something similar to what we have now. I took the liberty of suggesting that we did not want 40, 50-foot erector set antennas off of the back of our building. I figured that would be not in keeping with the image of the building that we've worked so hard on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Or any? Yes, Mr. Falvey.
Connection with that letter, do we also read something about the deputy was also, so you're gonna be looking at two significant positions? Is that correct?
I'll let
The deputy hasn't given us formal notice yet, so I can't comment on his status. But so you'll have to give me some more time on that.
Paper, the Hingham Journal.
I haven't gotten formal notice
Okay.
from the deputy.
Second question, the selection process, is it 100% yours, or does the state have a role in the, the commission personnel?
The selection process.
How does that go, the
Sure.
eventual filling of that top job?
Good, Mr. Chairman. The selection process is entirely under the purview of the Board of Selectmen as police commissioners. And they will determine the selection process, and ultimately they will choose the next police chief.
So there's no,
Just the three-member board here.
Okay. So, I thought that what we do is ask Ted to start the process for finding candidates, and to report back to us quickly
Okay.
on that. And I would gather that we'd start to see if there are any internal candidates.
Well, what I'd like to do is I'd like to outline to you what your options are for a search process and have you choose what process you want to engage in at your next meeting on the 1st of February.
Okay.
We have plenty of time if we move that, if we move on February 1st on one of those search processes. And, your options are, as you can imagine, internally, we have capable candidates I think you'll see. You could decide to do an external search or combinations. So.
I thought in some towns that they required or had to take tests, and the state civil service commission would be involved too, but no.
No, not at the police chief level.
Okay.
So what is it called, the weak chief process? Yeah.
No, that refers to something slightly different, but you are the hiring authority for the police chief.
As opposed to the fire department.
Bob, town meeting removed that from civil service some years ago. I think it was the early
Yeah, okay.
90s.
Yes, Mr. Healy?
Good evening. Is there any plan to have some kind of information sharing with the present chief, at least insofar as to run the department in the interim, if there's not a hire made by the time he resigns or retires?
Yes, the chief, as we would expect from someone who served the town so well for so long, that he will make himself available to the town subsequent to his retirement, should we need him at any level, whether it's on a full-time level or a part-time level. He will be here until such time as the town feels we could turn it over to another chief.
Well, my question is more focused on before he retires. Are there any plans to have him work with the existing leadership to ensure a smooth transition to the new chief?
Well, if the board, we have a couple of different options on hiring. You can look at internally within the department. That'll be a much quicker process because you have the people here already. If you decided to do an external search, that would take longer. In either case, I think you could get someone on board close to his retirement. Certainly with an external search, it would be much further down, probably into the May timeframe. Internally, we could move a lot quicker than that. Andrew?
Paul, you're raising some concerns.
Well, to me,
Just
it's
wanna
a
make-
very big...
Could you come up just so the public could hear, if you wouldn't mind? Thank you.
It's pretty sensitive, I think. it'd be
Sorry
okay
about that.
for there.
The position to me is just a critical one in town, and depending on how the search process goes, whether you go internally or externally, the department still needs to be run, crime is still occurring, and somebody's got to manage the department. If the present chief, who's a friend of mine, is in the process of winding down, somebody's got to be winding up within the department. And so that, when May or June or whenever, Taylor goes off with his deputy, you're not looking at a vacuum there. And I think, if the only thing that's handed to whoever comes in is the keys with very little else, that's going to be problematic. Especially where you have the expertise in place and the institutional knowledge to ensure, a very smooth transition.
Very good point. I've had discussions with the chief on the subject and have his assurances, as Ted has voiced, that whatever we need for him in transition, he will be there for us. And, I think let's get the process started, and that may decide, to your point, just how fast we get there. If suddenly there were an experienced chief who made himself available that was interested in, that's one option from the outside. If it's somebody internally, that's another option. So
Right.
I think we'll hear that quickly from Ted. But you're right.
And I'll be attaching on your next meeting, the first, timeframes to that, Paul, to speak to just what you have. So the board needs to consider that when they look at what their options are. Each option comes with pluses and minuses.
Absolutely.
And you need to understand those timeframes.
I also think that experience has a couple of different meanings in the world of, police work, perhaps even more than that. I mean, you have your experience policing, but you also have your experience with the town itself and how to liaise with the different departments and the different boards and the communities within the community. I mean, it's a pretty big position that's being considered here.
Right.
It is.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in on that. Okay, I could just, I'll hold on the discussion on the Economic Forum, which was the last unscheduled item, because we have an update to consider on the Hersey House and the request for proposal. And our attorney for the Hersey House, who has worked on that for us, Kerry Ryan, is in the audience, and he has separated himself from another meeting, and I don't want to keep him waiting any longer. So, thank you, Kerry.
Good evening.
Just to remind the public, you will recall we had a series of discussions about future uses for the Hersey House, and we had put forth, I think, 4 separate zoning articles at the time for the planning board. to consider, and before the planning board entertains that, we thought that perhaps we should hear where we are on potential bids, which might narrow that discussion in terms of what our options are. So my understanding is we have received some bids on the residential side of the equation, and the request for a proposal might be something we might want to pursue in that vein, but I'd welcome comment from my peers or comment from council if he cares to comment on the subject. You have been the point of contact for folks on this, so if I may.
There have been no bids as of yet. There hasn't been an RFP.
Right.
And so I guess the timing would be now probably to go ahead and get an RFP out to solicit those and to try to determine whether one of the, either offer or offers are ones that the board is willing to entertain. I think there have been some expressions of interest in the property. Primarily, it seems like is from a residential point of view. And I guess Ted has been working, I think, with Betty on the RFP, and they can probably give a better understanding of, where are you as far as what you need to do tonight.
Okay.
The main purpose of this agenda item was to try to solicit you folks, your opinions on the process that we're going through to make sure it was consistent with what you were looking for. Betty's outlined a timeline for us, which is in your packet. We are starting to run into some tight deadlines to achieve our goals. If I could just recap briefly, our goal is to issue an RFP, to receive bids, to select a bidder, to submit to town meeting the zoning articles, to have a purchase and sale agreement signed and executed prior to town meeting so that town meeting knows exactly what they're approving with the zoning change, and after town meeting we can close the real estate transaction. To that end, Betty Foley's been working with Susan Murphy to develop the RFP and make sure that it ties in with some of the legal requirements of the property. The barn, for example, and some other issues that they've been working through. We need to advertise this in the Central Register for 30 days.
30 days.
And so that, that sort of creates these timelines where we really need to
Put
get
this
this
up,
out.
would you be kind?
I have a copy right
All
there.
right, just wanna-
Actually,
With the new
this is
dates?
the new date.
Yes, we have a couple of changes.
All right. Okay, you got the new one up? Okay, so it says that tonight we would, as you just suggested, review what should be in the RFP, get it posted by February 2nd in the Central Register so that it could be issued, and that proposals would be due back to us by March 2nd, and an evaluation committee, the 3 selectmen, would complete the review of proposal, prepare a recommendation, and award by March 29th, contingent upon town meeting action. That's the schedule. So within the instructions for submission, was there anything, Betty, you wanted to bring to our attention?
There were a couple of items that came forward. In your last RFP for the Hersey House, a former board suggested that they were very interested in keeping the streetscape the way it was. They would heavily favor historic preservation of the streetscape, that sort of thing. Are your concerns such that you want to make sure that stays in place? Do you want to address, you'll look more favorably on something that doesn't involve relocation of the Hersey House, or that type of specific?
And also some of the commercial sides. Are you contemplating another 40B? Because, when you open it up for bids, people could bid on anything they want. And so if you're not interested in pursuing a certain direction, then I think it saves time with the bidders. I mean, you don't want someone to go through an enormous amount of trouble if you're just not interested in moving in that direction.
Yeah, we've been at this since 1998, and, I'm anxious. I think some of the discussions we've had, and I see a smile on Mr. Falvey's face. He's reminding me of that. So I'm anxious to move whatever way the quickest this can get done. Because
To Ted's point, I think it is important to point out where we feel we'd look favorably towards something as opposed to not looking favorably towards it. And one thing I think is we should decide now whether we're going to entertain a 40B concept or not. Another thing is relocation of the Hersey House. I think that's a big issue. Demolition of the house itself, would we take that into consideration? Or parts of it? Things of that matter, I think we should really discuss them and put in bold, black and white, what we are gonna allow and what we're not gonna allow, based on the input we've gotten from most of the community in the neighborhood.
And I would just add that it would be helpful if you considered how many, I know you've talked about this, how much you want to break that property up. Is it 2 lots? Is it 3 lots? Is it more than that? And if you have an idea in your mind, it would certainly help the process along.
Yeah. Well, in terms of that, I think we have discussed and we've shown drawings that would suggest that 3 lots would be allowable and done in a way that was in keeping with the neighborhood in terms of the lot size as well as the character of the neighborhood without creating too much density that would be overpowering.
that was the discussion that we had. And there was a site plan drawn up, I think, by our planning administrator in that regard, 2, 3, or, 1 big lot, I guess,
Yeah.
if somebody so chose. And I think the second consideration that we had discussed was residential, as Kerry had implied, and that no one has come forth, to my idea, with any, while there was some discussion about commercial opportunities, no one has come forth with those, with pursuing it. There have been some people who visited, but have not further pursued interest,
And I guess I would just remind more, for the public than the board, that the whole reason that there's any rezoning whatsoever even being discussed is that the parcel is currently zoned open space.
Official and open space.
Official and open space, and so if somebody even just wanted to simply buy the Hersey house and live there, right now that's not zoned for that. And so that's the only reason there's even zoning issues being discussed, is that it's not really currently zoned for a use that would most likely be used for in the future.
Okay. Laura, did you have anything that you wanted to?
I did. I'm looking at a couple of things. On page 2 of the draft, there's a little section called zoning. And it's very simple. It says, property is currently zoned official and open space. Use of the property for other than municipal purposes may require that a zoning change be approved at the 2011 annual town meeting. All proposals must indicate the proposed use of the property. I think we might want to beef that up a little bit and say that the board is considering proposals that are for Residence A or Business A or some combination thereof, and just say that's what we're considering and nothing else. I guess you would put, if we said we want a maximum of 3 lots, I mean, at the time, there was a time when I thought we were considering as many as 4, which I don't think would be overly dense on a lot that size. I don't know if it's doable, but I don't think it would be too dense.
Yeah, I didn't know if we had the ability to allow for 3, more than 3, based on the size of the road that would be required.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think it was an
I mean-
issue of density, I think it was an issue of what you could get zoned without a 40B
Yeah,
type
okay,
issue.
okay.
I think
And a
So we
bunch of-
think 3 is
and
the-
or a bunch
3
of
is the limit.
waivers.
Okay,
Which would require a bunch of waivers.
yeah.
If we were to entertain the idea of maybe a smaller roadway, other than what may be required.
So three lots.
Well, I would be willing to consider a proposal for 4, but as the other thing this proposal says, which I think is correct, is under the criteria, criteria number 2 is the proposals that are subject to the fewest contingencies will be rated the highest. I mean, if somebody wanted to do 4 lots, that would involve a lot of variances and, or waivers, whatever the proper technical
Yeah, I think that,
term is. And maybe that's not, maybe we just don't want to go there at this point.
I'm of a mind, I mean, I spent one afternoon with Katie and the engineer who drew up the site plan, and his comment was the best you could do was 3 without a whole bunch of other, and since time was of the
Yeah.
essence, that was the way he
Okay.
had suggested. So
Okay, well, that makes sense then. Then I think you would put that under division of property, something relative to maximum of 3 lots.
All right.
Then, over on, under the criteria, number, 4, advancement of the objectives of the town, including but not limited to improvement of the socio-cultural environment in the town through historic preservation or retention of a portion of land for open space. I think those are good. And this is the only place where you might mention moving the Hersey House. This board was never asked if we would be willing to move the Hersey House 5 feet or 10 feet or 30 feet. And I actually don't have an opinion on that until I hear what the proposal is. I do not want to see the Hersey House move forward. So I don't know if we want to leave that, or we could just, keep it simple and say, just leave it where it is. I'm on the fence about that, so I'd be open to hearing what
Can
what other people
I think some of the details on the actual RFP, you might want to just leave to, you have the new real estate council, use her in conjunction with Ted and Betty, I think, to kind of do a lot of the details of the RFP itself, because the RFP responses are going to have to come back to you.
Yeah, this is the meeting that we have for saying what we want to put in the RFP
Right.
going out.
So,
So our question
guess
is, how do we want to limit the responses that we're going to get? Because the first Hersey House RFP process back long, long ago got a wide variety of things that no one was interested in. So it's kind of a waste of time if we don't, if there are things that, proposals that we might get that we think are a waste of
Right.
time, we should rule them out.
and then that's a good point. And so maybe what you want to say is if it's important, such as the historical character needs to be observed, then you may want to put that in, or something along the lines of,
Yeah,
there should
that's in
not
here.
be proposals that involve demolition or movement of the Hersey House would be judged much less favorably than, obviously, than those that don't.
Isn't there a certain issue around consistency that we have discussed before us about the movement of the house? And I'm of a mind that we don't want the house moved. And that's what previous boards had decided as well. So my assumption is that had been discussed. Am I right? in
well,
that?
I think getting back to our basic conversation as to what we would like to see there, I think we came up with 2 things that we'd like to see. Either leave it as it is with one whole big lot, or entertain the idea of maybe subdividing and, or allowing it to be subdivided with 3 lots. So that in itself suggests that there's only 2 things you can do. You can either leave it the way it is and work with the property as 1 lot, or come back to the planning board with a small subdivision roadway that would, we know, based on some drawings, that a small roadway would be available and be able to be created to create 2 more additional lots. I think going past that, I think we're gonna find ourselves, in an area that I don't wanna go.
And I just remind the board, there was the other plan that the planning board had, or the Katie Lacy had given to you, which was the approval not required plan, which divided the lot into 2 lots. And so you kind of
That's
had
possible, too.
one whole lot, a 2 lot, which was an approval not required, and then a 3 lot, which would require a whole subdivision approvals.
Yeah.
Those were kind of the 3 things that at least you had looked at a prior meeting.
Right. And that would allow the planning board to weigh in on it. And if in their wisdom thought it would be better to reduce the size of the roadway to make a less of an impact on the streetscape, then we would turn to them to allow for something of that nature.
I guess in that regard, obviously, I think if we got a proposal that worked, or a combination of proposals for 3 lots, that probably the return to the town would be the highest on the 3-lot plan. However, under number 2 criteria says the proposals that are subject to the fewest contingencies will be rated highest. That's kind of in conflict with the price, which says the proposal that offers the highest price will get the highest rating. I wonder if we need number 2, proposals that are subject to the fewest contingencies will be rated highest. Our procurement experts should tell me, but I think we might get in trouble if we accept a proposal with a lot of contingencies, having said the ones that are subject to the fewest contingencies will be rated highest.
But remember that each of these criteria are all melded together. So if you have, for example, something that has more contingencies, the only reason you'd consider it is because it has a higher price.
Yeah.
And so they, one entity will win in one area and might lose in the other area. And, you will have.
So we have a little
discretion.
more
Some
fluidity there than I
flexibility.
thought.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the purpose, really, what we wanted to hear from you tonight was, the direction we've been going in is, 3 lots, possibly 1 commercial, because that's still a zoning potential change, and the other lots, residential. And is that the direction you want to go, or do you want us to pursue a broader spectrum of anything you want to do with the property? Let us know.
No.
I don't know. No, I don't think.
Although, we did have commercial on the,
Correct. And
possible
it is
commercial, yeah.
still a possibility
Yeah.
with this RFP.
yeah.
And would it be appropriate to attach the 2 possible subdivisions that the plans we have?
Yeah,
The two
Yeah.
lot-
yeah,
the
as
lot-
for example.
Might be helpful to
For
someone.
example.
For- As
Yeah.
examples only, correct?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. And I think we probably should make explicit, because the town has gone a different direction in the past, but 40B projects take a long time. And I don't argue with the approach of the previous board, who thought it would be nice to have some affordable senior housing downtown. I think that was a laudable goal. But after all the water under the bridge with the Hersey House, I think at this point, the priority is to move it along with the highest return to the town possible, that's consistent with the neighborhood look and feel. So I think we should just say the time has passed for considering a 40B project in this area.
I would echo that, for the very reason that you said, and that is time is of the essence here. And so I'm anxious to get this done the fastest way we can.
And
because-
I just want to say that I have a lot of respect for what the previous board was trying
So
to
do I.
accomplish, but because of what has happened in the interim, we just don't have the flexibility for large plans now.
That's right.
It is expected that we are going to execute the purchase and sale agreement prior to town meeting, and we are going to conclude the purchase and sale agreement and the transaction subsequent to town meeting prior to June 30th. So I think that would exclude a proposal along the 40B nature. I just don't, it's
So
not
I think,
possible to
so,
get there.
yeah, so I think
We
we
were
should,
going to put those time periods into the RFP.
yeah, and
I think that's important, because doesn't that also govern what kind of commercial enterprises might come forward?
I think it's important because it governs all the proposals, that those who are submitting proposals need to understand that that's what we're looking for in terms of a process. So if, do you really want someone who is interested in buying it for a single-family residence, but they're not prepared to close until 2012? No, you're not interested in
Yeah.
that.
do you want to put that under criteria for evaluation?
No, it won't be criteria for evaluation, it'll be in the RFP as
You'll
a
have
series
gonna
you'll have
criteria.
the timeline in the.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, those are
Guess
my
the
comments.
the last thing I thought might be important to maybe at least discuss would be the possibility of allowing a partial demolition of the addition of the Hersey House that was added much later than what the original structure when it was built.
Can you refresh my memory on when that addition was put on? Do you know? Because it itself might be historical, even though it's only half the age of the rest of the building. I don't actually know.
I don't know, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. I don't know, but,
I know that the previous proposal did involve demolition of that
Yeah.
wing.
yeah, and I don't know if we could somehow get some sort of answer from historic districts as to when that might have been.
We need to come
Built.
back to you a little bit more on the demolition discussions, specifically discussions we had with Real Estate Council tonight regarding the barn and how we work that into the RFP, so I don't think
Yeah.
we'd be
Yeah,
prepared to
is the,
answer on that.
is that agreement on the barn, I was asked and I didn't know the answer, was the agreement on the barn previously agreed different parties? Is that still in force?
Yes, the right of the abutter to purchase the barn is still available. And my understanding is that he does wish to purchase the barn and move it.
He does want
The
to.
party that was in charge of moving it is no longer involved in the process.
No, okay. So would that have to be addressed in the RFP?
Yes, that will be addressed in the RFP.
So specifically where it says preservation of the external historic appearance of the Hersey House building, barn, and streetscape.
Correct.
You'll need to fix that somehow to
there's
make clear
several of
what the
those.
role of the barn is.
What's going to happen is now, since Real Estate Council, now that you've got one in place, is going to be dealing with the purchase and sale agreement, she's now working on modifying this RFP and getting it in shape so that you can get it out the door.
Is there a conversation you can have with her to sort of see if there was a way of wording a partial demolition on the main house itself if it was built after a certain date,
Sure.
added after a certain date? If we could go back to the town records and say it was built, put on there in 1950, and we consider it not to be historic, that they might, it could be considered to be a part of the demolition plan?
Sure. Why don't I work with her and we'll work out some language
Okay.
that can address that issue.
All right,
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, I think that's
Yeah, you all
basically.
right? You're all right?
Did we cover
Betty,
everything you
did we
need?
cover everything, Betty?
Yes, you did.
You have everything you need?
I do, thank you.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me, Carol, go ahead. Shirley, please. You have this,
I do, I just wanted to be sure of the timeline. Could we just go over that again, because it doesn't match, but I thought, oh, okay.
There's a copy for you.
And was the value, property value determined yet, or is that a secret?
Well, the assessors have a property value for that. I don't have it with me right now. Betty, do you? I usually remember, as you know, I like to memorize numbers, but I don't have that one.
As you probably know, property values are not secret.
Right.
They're
No,
public
no, but
records,
I
so
was
you
just
could
kidding.
call, you
right.
could call the assessor if nobody here remembers.
But you don't know.
One of
what
the things we can't do is place a value on it and say that's, well, we can place minimum bids, but that's all we can do.
Okay, but it was assessed on the 17th, on the timeline?
Well, it wasn't assessed on the 17th. We solicited from the
I spoke
assessor.
to the assessor's department and got a value from them on the 17th.
Do you know what the amount is then?
I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head, and I'm reluctant to give you a number and have
Okay,
it be
okay.
off, so.
Smart.
I guess, and then is there a certain time the RFP is due on that day? On the day,
I believe
March
it's 12
2nd.
noon.
12.
noon time?
Yep.
Okay, and then I think that was it. Yeah. Oh, is there still going to be a tour on the 18th? It was in there?
February 18th?
Yeah,
February 18th, that's right.
that's
10
true,
10
that's going to
o'clock.
happen.
That's our tentative schedule right now. We want to look
Might
at the
be,
calendar,
okay.
but we are going to have a tour in the middle of the bid process.
But that RFP is still very much in draft form, Carol.
Okay. Okay, Carol? Yeah, yeah, okay. Okay, Mr. Ryan, do you need anything else, sir?
No,
No,
I don't
you-
think so.
Okay, you have
Thank you
enough?
very
Okay,
much.
and you'll convey our discussions to Ms. Murphy, Mrs. Murphy?
I will.
Okay,
Thank you.
very good. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Okay, thank you, Counsel. Okay. 8:32, we're 2 minutes late.
Oh, no.
But, I don't know, just,
We're making it up though, because we started at 7:05.
that's right, that's right, we're moving. Okay, our next formal item on the agenda is a twofold item. As soon as I find it here, that's what I moved, and that has to do with, first, a discussion with the harbor master on the mooring plan for the yacht club area, and then a brief discussion of the goals for the Harbor Development Commission, and I'd like to welcome Harbor Master Ken Corson to the table.
Do you have a copy of?
We do.
We all have copies. I
We
will
all
put
have
it up for
copies, but
our
we'll put
audience.
something
They're
up.
even in color.
And
I
they're
do
in-
have some larger ones over here if you'd like to see a more detailed representation, and if anyone in the audience would like to see one, there's a couple up here. This is the mooring field for the waters surrounding Hingham Yacht Club. It's a mooring plan that has been drawn up by CLE. It's the same firm that did the mooring plans for the Inner Harbor, as well as also in World's End, which we implemented last year. To get to this, this final plan, we went through roughly 3 steps, which I'll run through quickly for you. The first one was to locate and identify all the moorings that were in the waters around the Hingham Yacht Club area. CLE went out there, put GPS positions on every mooring, and identified who it belonged to, if they could identify the owner. The next step was to take all the water depth measurements so we'd know the topography of the bottom and the water depths. The second step, we looked at how the existing mooring field in the yacht club area is laid out, where the power boats are, where the sailboats are, where mixed uses are, and so forth. And then we set up a couple parameters that we needed to do. One, all vessels would be moored in water that was no shallower than 4 feet at low tide. No vessels would be moored in the channel, which is against federal law. And we tried to stick with mooring like boats together, sailboats together, power boats together, as much as we could. But the yacht club, the area around the yacht club is very dynamic. There's a lot of mixed uses, power and sail together. So we tried to stay with the way the uses are there, but structure it a little bit better to make it more practical and a little bit safer. After doing all that, we relocated vessels that were in areas that were not practical or unsafe, and then we aligned all the boats to a grid structure that was set up by CLE, giving every boat a very specific GPS location, as we did in the other 2 mooring fields. That yielded us with a plan that was a little bit different from this one. It was the first one. We took that to a public hearing back in September 24th. It was held here at Town Hall. We had roughly 50 people attend, and we had lengthy discussion, about 2 hours, on that initial plan. I took a lot of the comments, feedback. I've received lots of email, took that to CLE. We perfected the plan, and we now have this plan, which we took to another public hearing, which we held at the Yacht Club. That was on November 18th. We had roughly 40 or 50 people show up there. And we presented this plan, and since that hearing, there have been no changes to this plan. We felt that we'd met the objective at that time. The biggest concern of people that have boats in this area is their location. Some people have an area that they've had a boat in, and they want to keep it in that location, and I fully understand that. We're doing our best to keep everyone in their location. However, there are going to be some relocations and perfections.
How many, do you know?
How many boats do we have out there?
No, relocations.
That's hard to say. Every boat is going to be moved some distance, whether it be 5 feet, 10 feet, 20 feet, but they'll be remaining in that general area. We've done everything we can to keep them in the closest location to where they were. There have been some boats, maybe 20, 30, somewhere in there, that have been wholeheartedly moved because of dynamics of swing, or it's a powerboat that was stuck in a bunch of sailboats, and it was relocated. Most of those people are aware of that. They want it to be moved anyways. So the plan I have here for you now has met all the objectives. All the boats are in water that's greater than 4 feet at low tide. There's no boats in the channel. And I'll kind of run through the plan so you can get a feeling for what it is. We broke this mooring field up into 4 different areas: Area A, B, C, and D. Area A is larger boats. There's power in sail in that area. Typically, the sailboats line the channel. There's deeper water there. And then on Area B, you'll also have your sailboats typically along the channel, and then the power boats fall back behind the sailboats as the water gets shallower. That's the way that those 2 areas have been in the past, and we're keeping it in that same fashion, just organizing it. Area C has traditionally been powerboats, and that will continue to be powerboats in Area C. They start with the shorter vessels, those, the blue lines, which represent the boat and the pennants, are the smaller powerboats, and then as you move closer to D, the powerboats get bigger. Area D is a mixture of sail and power. To give you an idea on the spacing, the Area D is probably the, and I use this word liberally, it's the tightest packed area. The spacing around those boats is greater than what they have now, and also exceeds the spacing in the inner harbor, which we have had no issues with this prior season. There was plenty of space for the boats to move around. So CLE feels that this is a very, very good layout. There's enough moorings in here to meet the current needs, and should there be additional needs in the future, we're not going to be in a position where we can't permit boats out there.
Okay, can you give us some numbers?
I don't know the exact number on this right now, but we're roughly around the 300 mark. The way I'd like to proceed with this mooring plan is similar to the way we did the other two. I'd like the approval of this plan, but with any mooring field, there's dynamics year to year. You need to make small changes. We had that ability in the inner harbor as needs change, especially with the renewal process coming up. We have essentially allocated everyone a spot, but someone will be changing boats, and it might require some tweakings to the plan. And I'd like the ability also to make those needs and change them as we go forward with the renewal process this spring. But the biggest concern was for people, where's my boat going to be? Am I going to be moved? And we've done a very good job of keeping people where they've been and trying to maintain that.
Mr. Riley?
Couple of questions. Presently, there's how many moorings?
It's roughly 300 or so, roughly around 300. It's going to change as people renew their permits and we see the breakdown of boats. We will contour this a little bit to meet the needs a little bit better. So it's about 300.
At the end of the day, you'll have 300. What is it? What was it before you started this plan? How many were there?
I think there were probably about 270. It's difficult to really give an accurate number because there are moorings out there that haven't been properly accounted for. And part of this process is we're accounting for every mooring that's in the community. We've already taken care of the inner harbor, we've worked through World's End, and now we're tackling the yacht club. So once we get to the end of this boating season, we'll have every mooring GPS placed, accounted for, who it belongs to, and I'll be able to give you a very accurate number for the number of moorings in the yacht club area. Just like I can tell you right now, there's 231 moorings in the inner harbor, and there's 40 in World's End. So I'll be able to give you an accurate number like that once we get through the renewal process.
Okay, and on your schematic here, you have a white lined area through the middle of it. Does that represent what they call the fairway or
Yes, that's the federal channel.
federal channel?
Exactly.
And the yacht club would have the ability to have its present docking facilities off their land area without interfering with the federal.
Yes. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And with this entire process, I did meet with members of the Yacht Club Executive Board on numerous occasions to make sure that this plan wouldn't adversely affect the Yacht Club or cause any issues for them. I don't think there's anyone here from the Yacht Club tonight, but I know that if there was someone here, they would be in full favor of this. Going forward with the mooring permit renewal and any changes that we might make, the small tweaks, obviously I'll still communicate with them and seek their input, and if they have any concerns, address them as I have.
Okay, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but in the future, is it your intention to look at the inner basin area of the shipyard? Does that come under your jurisdiction?
It does. So when we talk about the back river, we do have funding and plans to optimize the moorings in the back river, not the moorings that are within Hewitt's, the shipyards, their leased area, but the back river along Stoddard's Neck, and we're also doing the Weymouth side too. But there will be review of permits held by the different waterfront organizations down there to see what the permits allow for and what they might be lacking.
Right, so what you're saying is that your jurisdiction for those private moorings in the Hingham Shipyard Basin is out of your control with the exception of the permits?
Yeah, we issue the mooring permits. Right now, we don't control the mooring field. The shipyard should have a permit, both Chapter 91 license as well as an Army Corps permit, that allow them to essentially lease the moorings that are in that area. There will be a review of permits, part of the CLE amendments that you approved. So we'll be reviewing their permits as well as other organizations, make sure they're all current.
Okay, and just for the public's knowledge, how does the mooring operation work with respect to revenue for the town?
Every mooring out here requires a permit, and it's based on the length of the vessel's overall length. So if it's a 20-foot boat, it's $7 per foot, and that's the revenue the town collects for that mooring. I think that by incorporating this plan, it will help us to manage that area better, especially with the people that don't turn in their mooring permits. Right now, we have to go out and find them. This will help us track it, I think, a little bit better and locate the moorings that didn't get permits. So it should help make that process a little bit easier. Right now, it's a tremendous task to go out there and check every mooring and try to find when the boat's on it and so forth. So I think this will help us because every mooring will have a number as they do in the Inner Harbor. We'll be able to track it directly to an owner. If there's a mooring out there without a number, we'll be able to have it removed. So it'll make things better.
And these moorings will be placed under that GPS system that you've...
That's correct.
Okay,
They'll be placed under that GPS system.
okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Laura?
I have no questions. You've been very clear, but I would like to applaud all the hard work that you did reaching out to the community and the people who are affected by this. And people really do care about where their moorings are. And
They do.
so I think you did a great job giving everybody an opportunity to be heard. And so that will make everything go much more smoothly. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Before I open it up to the public, just, I'm not I am a boat owner, so I read the magazines a lot, and there's a tendency today for purchasing of boats to be smaller rather than bigger, and that's a reflection of the economy in the marketplace. So you have, I assume, some flexibility in this plan, given how you've laid it out, as I see, to move the colors around, if you will, so that we can move it and reflect the marketplace that I perceive is going on. And
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons I made
as opposed
that.
to the other way, if they were moving in the bigger direction, then we'd have different problems.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's one reason I made that request to be able to change it as needed going forward. Not wholeheartedly, but small changes, which over time it will develop into a slightly different field, but it'll be a progressional trade changed as the need changes in the area, so.
Okay. I see there are a number of people, and you all look like you have sea legs, so I'll welcome Mr. Kenny. Would you like to step up to the microphone?
Hi, my name's John Kenny, a resident of the town at 8 Brewer Way and co-owner of Hingham Harbor Marina at 26 Summer Street. I too would like to echo Laura's praise for the artful navigation of a very sensitive issue for longtime boaters. So my hat's off for having navigated the yacht club and the various members to get them all equally dissatisfied with where they're. But no, seriously, I have two questions. One that plays directly off what John Riley was asking about, and that relates to the amendment of the CLE contract. The work to be performed there was a survey and a number of things, but an important piece of the work ran right to the issue of properly cleaning up the permitting for the Inner Harbor moorings. As I recalled, the work was going to consist of redefining what's now Coast Guard special anchorage area that conflicts with the mooring field, and then ultimately applying for Chapter 91 for the Hingham Inner Harbor mooring field, and I just wondered what the status of that was.
Absolutely. The permitting process for all the town mooring fields and everything, and the reallocation of that special anchorage is underway. In the talks with the Coast Guard, what they want us to do is get all our moorings organized and then go forward, because it'll require several public hearings where they want to redefine all of them at the same time. So once we get this plan in place, we'll be able to then redraw these special anchorages, and we'll, at one point, we'll go forward with both the inner harbor as well as the waters around the yacht club. For those of you that don't know, the federal government has set up these special anchorages which essentially outline the mooring fields, and that allows vessels under 65 feet to moor there and not have to have navigation lights on and so forth. So over time, a lot of the boats have migrated outside of that special anchorage. So we've brought them back into that special anchorage as much as we can, and now these boundaries will be redefined to meet the current plan. So
If you can afford a 65-foot boat, you can park it wherever you.
And one more question.
Use your running lights.
One more quick question, if you'd permit me. So, and I am embarrassed by the ignorance of this question, especially given that I'm a business owner in the business. But I want to make sure I'm clear. The town of Hingham derives $7 a foot for every boat that's licensed to be in the water, whether it's at a dock or in the public mooring field or in a private mooring field?
that's correct.
So $7 a foot to the town
$7 a
for
foot
every linear foot of boat,
for
wherever
every
it is.
linear foot of boat, whether it be on a slip or on a mooring.
Great, that's what I thought. It's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, John. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay. All right. So, what do you need from us, sir? A vote?
That would be great.
Yes. I'll move to approve the updated mooring plan for the yacht club area.
Second.
Any further discussion, comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you,
Okay.
Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ken, you were here as well to talk about goals, is that right? Are you ready to do?
I'm part of the committee, so
Harbor
I think
Development.
that'll be the committee that'll do the majority of the
Okay.
talking. So I'll turn that over to Alan.
Hey, come on, all right, so if you can make space for the group. Nick is here, I see everybody, we got them all here.
You guys.
Alan, if you'd be so kind, introduce yourself to the public and then introduce your committee members who are here. We can shine the camera on them so
Okay, great.
their families know where they are.
I'm Alan Peralta of 2 Anderson Road in Hingham, the chairman of the Harbor Development Committee and a member of the Harbor Planning Task Force. Other members of the Harbor Development Committee are Bob Mosher, Chris Daly, and Dave Fenton, who are here today. Kind of ex officio, Ken Corson's at all our meetings, whether he likes it or not. And Nick Amder, who was the chairman for a number of years, usually gives us his advice at most meetings, is here as well.
Thank you.
The reason we asked to come before you tonight was just the concept of, actually, I'll steal one of those back. if it's-
Sure, here you go, I have an extra.
Realize I gave them all out. Was basically the Harbor Development Committee serves at the pleasure of the Board of Selectmen. And I think this most recent group, we thought it would be prudent that we decided, kind of following up on the idea of the Harbor Task Force, which was kind of task-oriented, which we tried to stay on last year. And I think, as you know, the task force, they did accomplish a number of different things of documenting things, and we said, well, maybe the Harbor Development Committee should look more specifically. You know, we've had a master plan that was done, and we've discussed a number of things over the years and been a sounding board for a number of things pursuant to the waters of Hingham, not just the inner harbor. But we thought it would be prudent for us to come before you and say, look, we've collectively put down on paper these ideas for, our general goals, and then our specific task of what we thought we may want to try to accomplish in the near term. And so we just thought we wanted to make sure in reviewing that with the selectmen that we're on the same page. And if there are other issues that you think we should be looking at beyond what's on here, we kind of want to hear that. And if I might also say, I don't know and maybe Mr. Riley can talk better about it, the Harbor Task Force, the chairperson, Mrs. Murphy, is resigned from the planning board, so there's some question who the planning board's representative is going to be on that. We really haven't had a task force meeting per se in a while. And then that raises the question, should some of the things that we might have thought the task force should be doing, do the selectmen feel the Harbor Development Committee might be the sounding board for that? That's kind of a broad question, I guess, before I get into the specifics of what we already have.
Okay, maybe we can start there first.
Okay.
If that, yeah.
Well, my understanding is that there's discussions going on amongst the planning board members
Correct.
themselves as to who the replacement of Mrs. Murphy should be. We feel we would like to see Judy Sneath take the position because of her position with respect to the downtown area and the association. So it would only make sense for her to hopefully continue down the road and into the harbor area. But that's not certain either.
Right.
But we will probably have a meeting not too long in the distant future coming, and that will be discussed.
Okay, so, we discussed that we had our meeting just before yours, and we figured, and I personally, I think I was here before the selectmen a couple of months ago with Susan Murphy, and I think there is a role for the task force that's a little broader than maybe the Harbor Development Committee is. So I don't want to say it in the sense that I don't think there should be one. It's just a matter of, in reality, if there's a void, there's certain things the selectmen feel that should be being moved forward. We're willing to at least do certain things if you think it's in our best interest.
Yeah, I thought that's how we had left it, that there were
Correct.
some things that you had picked up from the task force and would run with those to get them done.
Correct. And that was kind of the understanding, to make sure we're on the same page as far as that goes.
I also think that in general, the public feels very comfortable with the task force because the representation there is the planning board, the board of selectmen, the trustees of the beach, other individuals, the harbor master.
Yeah, there's a
So-
breadth of that
The
we
breadth.
don't have.
Right.
Right. So I agree. So I just wanted to raise that as an issue. But as you can see what's before you, we generally broke our goals and objectives into general versus specific. And the general ones are, as you see, is to support, public access to the waterfront, identifying harbor-related projects that deliver revenue to the town, which is also something the task force was looking at, to serve as the advisory committee to the Board of Selectmen. The Harbor Masters Department, Ken regularly comes to our meetings, and, we're kind of the sounding board oftentimes for some of his things, like we were for the optimization of the moorings last year, and we were for the yacht club this year. And I agree with the comments that Selectman Burns made as far as, I thought it was ambitious that the year after he got the optimization of the harbor, he was willing to take on the yacht club the very next year. But I think a lot of the, just as an aside, a lot of those fears, and I think he went through that process last year, there's a lot more fear of change than the reality of the danger of change. So when he really got into it, I think this process was a little bit easier than I think the last one was, and I think the process has been well worth it because of the public exposure that he's had. So that's a role that we've served. And to continue to play a role in the Harbor Task Force or other committees, we're doing some work with the Bear Cove Committee on something we'll talk about in a minute. And then this one was kind of a different thing. Focus on achievable projects and tasks. Is there something, there was a very good study that was done a couple of years ago. In fact, I'll pass on just some images from that that were in that master plan, and they're kind of in sequence, kind of from the bathing beach all the way to Steamboat Wharf. And a big thing in that is going to be access. And it's one of the things we kind of talk about in the specific area, the whole idea of a boardwalk or something of that nature. Where does it start? What's the funding mechanism? Things of that nature. We've talked about it. I think it's probably the biggest consensus of our board is that when we went through it, we had everyone individually put down what their goals and objectives were. And the one that rang through for everyone was, could we improve pedestrian access? Defined. I mean, you can obviously walk from the bathing beach to Steamboat. It isn't the most pleasurable experience in every location. You have certain choke points. You get near the control box, near 3A across some stars, and, I had an aside, the first day I was appointed to the Harbor Development Committee, I made a point of walking along the harbor, and I got to that point where the control box was, and there was a young man who asked me if I needed help getting across the intersection. I didn't think I looked that infirm at the time, but I think that's just an indication of how, unfriendly that area is. I'm standing there and he's thinking, boy, this guy looks like he's lost, And so that's always been a choke point. And then I think you get down by the 3A Rotary, and it's pedestrian unfriendly. You get down there, and again, you're on top of, 25,000 cars a day going through there. Again, that's more of a selectman issue than ours, but we do
Very
have...
much related.
It is related, and I think we discussed that very specifically tonight amongst our own group. Clearly, we're not going to be the champions of anything happening on the 3A Rotary, but we would like the input as far as well, how does it work as far as improving pedestrian access if it is improved? And I know there's going to be a question of who owns it, Mass Highway, whomever, we understand that, but I think overall, and there's different jurisdictions, and we've got into that with the task force, between the bathing beach and lands that were taken with CPC funds, and then private things. So we understand if you're going to do public access from the bathing beach to Steamboat, you're crossing public, private, different types of public property. But we kind of felt as a group that it's been too long without really something concise being done in that. And we think that we would like to look at that more specifically, and we're working with Ken on the CLE study, which part of that is a physical study of areas like, Steamboat Wharf, which we know has got some, bulkhead issues. I think it's a great potential there, but you've got some safety issues if you're going out there right now that we again want to understand what they are. So if we would go after grant monies, we at least have identified something, and that's when we were talking with Ken. We think a big part of the CLE issue is, can we at least be at a position where it's step one towards being able to put a grant application together for something. And again, we don't see ourselves being the primary workers on that, but we might work with Katie Lacey or with Ken in trying to help pull things together. So again, without taking too much time, the specific items were, we were tasked by the task force to vet this idea of a town marina concept, and I think we will be taking that up in 2011. Just to continue monitoring the dredge, annual contributions to the dredging fund, because as you know, that's something that generally this committee always has done, to make sure that we have enough money in our fund, so when we're looking for, we have to come up with a match every 10 years, hopefully, if not less, on the dredging cycle. And then the third one is just to make sure we're on the same page as the Board of Selectmen. The fourth one is, again, gets to the one that is assess the cost, benefits, and impacts of a waterfront boardwalk, or whether it's wood, brick, or whatever. And we originally had with and without a pedestrian bridge between Whitney Wharf and 3 Otis Street, and Chris Daly pointed to me, said, well, we've gone longer talking about the idea of a bridge. Let's look at it without, and if we can eventually get a bridge, so much the better. But, it shouldn't be the sticking point that stops the concept of that being considered. And then the next one is analyzing the potential establishment of an enterprise fund, which I think this board has probably talked about before. Mm-hmm. Ken was good enough to get the Hull Harbor Master before our group tonight, talking about how it's worked there. We're hoping to get the Situate Harbor Master to our meeting in February so we can hear the advantages and how they've done it. We think it's something, even though it's different from the concept of other revenue sources, because we see this as a way maybe that at least becomes self-supporting. Some things we're talking about at the waterfront could be supported by an enterprise fund. Right now, they're done out of town. Now, obviously, the other side is that those funds can only be used for harbor-related activities. And there may be politically some people not that fond of that concept. And we're cognizant of that. But I think it should be vetted, I think. And we think we're not a bad group to at least start that and talk to you about it. Then we do have partner with other organizations about kayaking. That's become a much more popular concept in past years. Right now, a lot of people do it near the boat ramp. Not a little bit of conflict that occurs there. We specifically have looked at the idea of maybe doing something near Bear Cove. Bear Cove recently got some more property from the state, and we had a field meeting there on the 10th, I believe, of December, looking at where that might be able to be done safely with land that the town kind of owns now, and you wouldn't have to do a whole lot of improvements. We've also talked about the Bouvet property, which is right off by the Hingham shipyard, which has limited parking, but is a great, very calm area where you could potentially launch a kayak. And we're not in other car top boating, but kayaks are the ones that come to mind. And then our last one, again, is the whole idea of improving access all the way from Steamboat to to Whitney Wharf and the bathing beach, but also that whole link between Hingham Square and the harbor. I mean, I think they're great assets that seem to be a world apart, even though they're right adjacent to each other. So I think those are what we see, and we're certainly open to discussions of what you think are the highest priorities, or if there are other things you think we should, and I don't know if there's any other things any of the other members want to mention, or assume that's it.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you for updating us on filling in the blanks. This is not easy, having as many diverse groups come together and work at this, and I very much appreciate the work that you've done, because it takes time and effort, and we've been at this for 375 years, so there's probably a few other ways to do this. So I had some thoughts. I'd just like to do that, but I'll open it up first to, you want me to go first, if I could? You know, I think one of the questions, you know, it comes from your title in harbor development. You know, there are some, I would say, development opportunities that, what should we be doing where there is nothing today? And is it on the table or off the table? And I'm not prejudging the answer, but I would certainly welcome input from your group, particularly as you start to address the dredging issue. If we wanted to do development in a certain area, that changes our dredging plans, perhaps, and that was something I'd welcome to hear what you all would think about what could or should or we shouldn't do in terms of that. So I'd like you to, Jason, I'd like to hear your thoughts, not tonight.
Okay, sure. Yep.
But like to take that off the table for us and come back to us with whether or not. And I certainly agree with the, you know, the feasibility study on the marina. That's something we've been talking about for a long time, and the boardwalk and the rest of it. More importantly, I think you know, you're taking on the work that needs to get done. I just applaud that, because it doesn't just happen. And we've been talking about this stuff, jeepers, for a long time.
No.
So let's get on with it. So, John?
Well, I'd like to thank the Harbor Development Committee for doing the work that it has done, including the former member, Nick Gamda, who is somebody who has a real interest in the harbor, and he's shown that interest for many years now, in his input for the historical aspect of where other committees have gone, and we find ourselves not repeating something that's already been looked at is very valuable, and I thank Nick for that. But I also would like to point out the idea of maybe additional dredging. I think that is a good idea to try to look at, because it probably won't be another 10 years before we have another dredging operation going on down there. The idea of maybe moving the fairway out to create more mooring opportunities, is that possible? And does it fit with the ideas that the state would allow, or the federal government would allow, for expansion of the mooring area, which would be to our benefit, would create more revenue. Also would allow us to maybe look at our own possible town-owned marina with a idea of more expansive abilities. I think that's important. The idea of the 91A, which allows for public access, I think is a good one. I think we've been talking about it for a while. I would like to see them concentrate on that more, if they could, even if it's sectional. Even if we can get one sectional section at a time done. Probably most important, the bridge across the inlet there between Whitney Wharf and 3 Auto Street. I think that's really important. I think there's some money left over that the CPC has mentioned to the harbor development that there still could be used for that purpose, to see if the feasibility is even still there, which I think it is. There was one drawing here showing that concept across the waterway, and I've loved that since the day I saw it. I think
Right.
that is probably the most
That is.
best proposal I think we can, look at. I also asked my friend Bob Mosier to use his artistic abilities to maybe come up with a design for the potential of a marina building, which might be nice in keeping with something like what we see at the Lincoln Sailing Club. So I'm really impressed with the amount of work that the group has done. I think they're very aggressive, but more importantly, I think a lot of them have the background in the marina industry that is really an asset to the town. And I want to thank these fellows for doing what they've done to even to get us themselves in front of the selectmen, suggesting that they are an advisory committee to the selectmen, and that they continue working as such. So-
Okay, thank you, thank you. I forgot,
Yes.
in my dialogue here, the kayaking issue is, as a boater, is a safety issue for me. As I go up the Quincy Channel and dodge kayakers and sailboats and the rest of it, and nobody seems to have jurisdiction over there, and that's a constant, it's a personal issue with me. But I could be concerned about making sure we have an area where kayakers can go and under extremely safe conditions, and that, and they need a lot of territory.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whenever we do this, we're always actively involved with the harbor master, because we figured Ken's our best sounding board as to where it is and isn't appropriate, and he knows where most of the conflicts
Yeah.
happen now, where the more unsafe conditions might happen, so we're cognizant of that.
Yeah, increasingly the fact of visibility to those of us, sometimes you don't see them until it's almost too late, and that's, even if you're moving at wake speed, that's still, that's scary.
Well, if everybody keeps getting smaller boats, maybe the conflict won't be as bad.
That's right, that's right, we'll be down lower in the water, that's right, that's right. You don't need binoculars.
There you go.
That's right. Okay, Laura, I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to thank the Harbor Development Committee also for all the work that you've done in the past, and especially for taking the time to step back and think about all this stuff, which every committee needs to do from time to time, so I appreciate that very much. I think I feel like I would have a lot more smarter things to say if I'd had the opportunity to see it first and think about it prior to the meeting, so it's a little hard to react off the cuff. But I did have, so I'm I'm sure I'm not going to have the grand vision that I would have otherwise, but I have a few comments on what you've said. I just noticed that your specific objectives is a very full plate. So I assume that if some of them don't get accomplished in 2011, they'll just roll over to 2012, because some of these are clearly multi-year projects.
Yeah, we want to at least get these on the table and get them to some stage where at least they could be picked up by either future committees or ourselves in the future. We understand that.
Well, I think that, I see the kayaking issue from a slightly different perspective, since that's the biggest boat I ever go in. And
I haven't run you over.
no, but I really appreciate the idea of partnering with maybe public-private partnerships to get more programs down at the harbor. I think that that would bring a completely different, encourage there's a lot of people in this town who do that, and to encourage them to come down to the harbor and do it would be a tremendous service that your group could provide. So some visibility for what's available, visibility for the safety aspects that Ken can inform us about, for everybody about what's the best kayaking territory and what is not. I do worry a little bit about the property down next to the Back River Bridge, because it's kind of a little, it's not that safe down there.
No, we've
for-
talked about that. The one spot we looked at that day is, there's almost like a little inlet around the corner from where that is. And we even mentioned that thing today, that if we did, there were certain times at certain currents that it'd have to be posted. But there is kind of a relatively shallow protected area where we went on our field visit that would, believe be appropriate. But it's a very good point. I mean,
Because I worry that there would be certain times of day, every
Correct.
day, when it would not be safe there. And so to encourage people to come down there and put in might be asking for some trouble that maybe we should look elsewhere, I don't know.
yeah, and this is something we're just starting to vet, and we haven't even met the Bear Code Committee yet, but it's a good point.
From the kayaker point of view.
It is.
The bridge, which I'm going to put up here, the picture of it, the lovely picture that everybody's heart just goes right out to this picture. The last I heard about the bridge that's right up next to the sidewalk was that proved to be impossible. I can't remember whether it was for bureaucratic or architectural or structural reasons, but that was off the table. Is that the case?
I believe so. Chris can speak to that.
Affixing the bridge to the head wall.
Could you come up, Chris, could you come up, please?
Chris Daly, 1 Harvard Drive, Secretary, the Harvard Development Committee. When we looked at that last, we found that from a construction engineering perspective, it was not feasible to attach the bridge to that head wall, which is right there. We also looked at different options to run the bridge off more towards the outer part of Whitney Wharf to the end of the other wharf where 3 Otis Street is, and there are various barriers to doing it, and cost, and actually a big part of the cost was, remember, the traffic detail cost was exorbitant to have the detail cops and other associated safety people out there. So in the end, I think the cost of it was just too much.
And did you consider, I mean, is it an option, I know nothing about this. Was it an option engineering-wise to maybe see if we can put some pilings in there to put it on?
Certainly, and could you cantilever off something? There's a lot of things to discuss, and I think it needs to be vetted a little further. I mean, again, we all agree it would be your optimum scenario if we can do that, but it's got more expense and engineering what-ifs to it than some of the other things do.
Yeah. Well, I think that the Community Preservation Committee has been trying to support this project in whatever way it can with recommendations at town meeting, and it would be a great thing if you could come back with a report on the doability of this particular bridge concept, which I think everybody really likes. It's just how can you do it and what would the cost be? And another thought that I had to do, and I don't actually know for a fact that this is an issue on an ongoing basis. I just know that every time that I try to go down and park at the Lincoln Maritime Center for an event, it's hard, that parking area that is next to Barnes Wharf. I worry a little bit because it's kind of disorganized, and I know that there are sometimes safety issues with people getting in and out there, and I wonder, I don't know, I just wondered if you would maybe reach out to Lincoln Maritime Center and ask, how's the parking work? Or maybe check for yourself whether the parking really works for what they have going on down there. And would there be a way to organize it a little bit better, kind of like the mooring field, only for cars, to fit the cars in better in a little bit more organized fashion so that people can get in and out easier? That was a thought I had, not to add to your enormous list of 2011 objectives and goals, but that jumps to my mind as something that I wondered about down at Harvard.
And if I could interrupt to that point, I think it's an excellent point Laura made is, remember the Rotary was on our list of to-dos and desirables with the state. I'm not so sure we're going to get that.
It's still on the list.
But I'm not optimistic.
Not this year.
Not this year,
Next year.
or next year, or whatever. So I would just want to support Laura's comment that's important because, again, that access and egress issue is going to become all that much more complicated if we're successful at doing these. So
Yeah, and that is an issue that's come up before the committee in past years, too, the whole thing of access or even just the average person feeling they can or can't walk out on that property. I mean, there's a feeling that it's almost private even though it's public, and that's getting into a whole different issue than what you said. But I think the whole issue of access and where you park, and what if I want to go down in the wintertime and park and I want to fish? I mean, I think they were all relevant points,
A
you know?
couple of years, I worked very hard to try to get a sign put up that says property of town of Hingham. My idea was that people would go around the Rotary and catch that idea from a sign that they could actually see.
Right.
But the sign, I understand there were budget problems, but the sign ended up being this big
Right,
and written in script so that you can't actually read it even from more than like 5 feet away.
right.
And revisiting to that, I just think having some, that would be your cheapest PR probably about
Correct.
that, if you could design such a sign to go along with the Lincoln Maritime or next to it or under it or something like that. You know, Barnes Wharf, Town of Hingham, public welcome, something like that.
Right. Oh, I agree.
That is an issue, though, that has to be worked out with Lincoln Maritime Center, because, you know, they have concerns about the public welcome piece of it, only, not that the public isn't welcome, but only because of their responsibility for the children who use the wharf down there. You know, they're responsible for knowing who is on the wharf with the children when their programs are going on.
Sure.
So that raises issues for them that need discussion, but you can talk with them
Yeah,
about it.
no, I think that's a relevant thing.
Well,
One of the other
yeah.
sketches that's there, while I have a chance, is we actually show the the bathhouse actually in a sketch, and I think it's interesting. It's not that far off the concept of what the task force agreed as accessory uses for snack stands and things like that. And again, it's a visual where there's almost like a farmer's porch put off of it, and we've talked, we have with the task force too, of working with the bathing beaches, kind of like, even though they're independent, they don't really have staff per se of vetting that idea, you know, that they've talked about improving the bathhouse, and the question is where the funds come for that, and we thought you may be conceivable to put out an RFP for something of that nature, where someone might actually go and improve it and allow them to expand it. But again, you know, we may either do that with the task force or our own group or something. We're willing to look at it if the selectmen think that's worth looking at. And we think, again, in order to get more people to the harbor, I mean, there isn't, we don't have, our restroom facilities could be better, and that's one of the main reasons the bathhouse makes some sense, is right now it's open during, you know, beach days. You know, so it's irregular. One doesn't know if they're going down, even bring a sandwich down there, can I go to the bathroom there? And if it was opened, you know, longer hours, more regular basis, I think that would accomplish one of the issues of, you know, having one place. I think there's multiple places could serve to have bathrooms, but that would be a start. And that's something we thought of, again, that we could work with either the selectmen or the planner or someone like that to help them put an RFP out. Or at least think of that idea, you know, kind of flesh that out a little further. You know?
Okay. Well, thank you. John, you had something?
Yeah, just a couple of things I wanted to try to add. There was a suggestion that maybe we should look into a pre-stressed concrete plank that could go from one side of the Whitney Wharf to 3 Otis Street, which would not require any pilings or anything like that, but would be certainly strong enough to take the weight of, you know, people going across it. So that's one thing I'd like you to look into, but also, in terms of the Rotary and the improvements, one of the problems we're facing is to try to make it user-friendly from the downtown area to the harbor. And when we discuss with the state what we'd like to see with respect to the harbor, the Rotary, not only reconfiguration of that Rotary, but we also wanted to maybe have them look at improvements that we could do in front of, like, Stars as part of that project. And they initially agreed to that. And I think one thing that we could try to do is that we have an official from the state, Mass Highway, who lives here in Hingham, and maybe who has a lot of authority as to what projects get done before the other. Maybe if we could invite him to one of your harbor development meetings and tell him what our situation is, and if maybe he has any suggestions, that might be something I would like to see you try to do. And I think, Alan, you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
I think with your contacts in the construction industry, the district I'm referring to as well. So that might be, even if we can get the small improvements down in front of Stars,
Yep.
Without the Rotary, might be to our benefit.
Good point. Okay. Alan, as Laura said, we gave you something for 2011, 12, and 13. So
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
see
there we
you
go.
we'll see you in 3 years.
All right. Thank you.
Actually,
This is all done.
I was going to interrupt and say, well, that gives you 2011.
That's right.
That's a good list. Now we'll talk about 2012. So,
All right.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
I thank everyone for the time and energy, as we all do. So thank you for coming in and clarifying this for us.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator, the last item open was discussion of the date for the Economic Forum.
Correct.
And I know you had done some research on our time commitments as to warrant articles and all the rest. So you have a date for, I believe, February 8th is the email I saw as the date for the joint meeting with advisory and the school committee?
Correct, and that's been confirmed by all as a date that will work.
Good, okay. And then the following week is school vacation and, or I think.
The week after next.
The week after. And,
You're really limited for the Economic Forum to the weekend of the 12th and 13th.
Okay. So be it.
Could we call it the town forum or something?
Yeah,
just to,
I agree.
you know,
I think the Economic Forum is not, because there's some.
People will expect something different than what we're planning, I think.
That's right, that's right.
And economics might not be the focus as they have been the
Town
last
forum. I
year.
think the town forum concept is, it's a great suggestion. Because one of the items I wanted to see continue to be discussed, because it's work that has to be developed, is the road building program that Roger came in and talked to us about and wanted to come back, and I think he want to solicit input from our citizenry on that. And there may be other huge or big projects like that that we're thinking about that we should get on the people's agenda so they can give us input.
So what we were hoping was that you would pick a date tonight, and then maybe we could set up some preliminary meetings amongst your group so that we could see what that presentation was going to look like, make sure everyone was comfortable with it.
So the 13th?
13th would be a Sunday from
That's what
1
it
to
is.
4.
1 to 4?
1 to 4 on the 13th, and no foot, no.
And Betty's been
Is that-
Recreation
gracious
has
enough to,
kindly agreed to block the gym that afternoon so that you won't be listening to basketballs bounce off the.
Okay,
We
thank you.
don't have to worry about the Super Bowl.
No. That's all.
Ted is looking at the floor.
I am not allowed to talk about
Appointments.
that, I want you to
I
know.
think you've done all your appointments. Anything else that you
Well, selectmen reports and.
Selectmen reports. So Laura, you had an issue you wanted to
Yes, I
talk-
just asked that this copy of this letter be provided to you. This is a letter from the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. They have some grant money available for planning. And our town, the head of our community planning director had asked for input about what we might apply for, because we would not want to let free money go by without asking for some of it. And so I had a number of recommendations. Marco Bohr, who is our representative to the MAPC, said he didn't know if Hingham needed to do this, but a number of towns were talking about applying for funds to update their housing production plan for affordable housing. And that's something that the Housing Trust has talked about possibly doing since it's about 4 years old, our housing production plan. But I don't think that's really top priority. Some other suggestions were, I know Bruce, you had considered somehow kickstarting the process of revamping the town's master plan. So that was something to think about as well. And the chair of the Energy Action Committee had called Katie to discuss possibly seeking funds to help for technical assistance in drafting a wind power zoning bylaw. That was another idea. And then, but actually what's really going on right now is we have a need for planning funds for between now and June 30th to move this is my understanding, to move the South Hingham Sewer District forward between now and June 30th. We have something on the warrant to provide some funds for the next year, but if I have this right, Ted, there's something that needs, stuff that needs to get done right now, and the community planning director is looking for the funds to do it with. And so those were 4 ideas about what we might apply for, some more baked and some less baked, but my feeling was that the South Hingham sewer, this is our top priority project, and it's already in flight, and I think it would also make a compelling application as
And it
well,
would
so.
build right off what the South Shore Chamber had talked to us about. and,
But what I said I would do was come and throw these ideas out to you, and because Katie said, just tell me what to write, and I'll write it, and I'll get it in, but she wanted some direction
I
from
think
us.
the 10-year, if I may, thank you for bringing that up, the 10-year master plan, we're past due. We talked about that 2 years ago, and I know we were diverted on more issues, more urgent issues. But I think it is something, because the concept was, if we had a good fundamental plan, it was really just updating it.
Correct.
Based on what we know today, and I think we need to do that. Otherwise, it'll sit on the shelf and it's already outdated. So I would push that up on the priority list as something, because it's 2010. We now have new data coming from the federal government on census and other things that would fit right in with that issue.
Well, maybe generally we do a little goal setting after town meeting for the next, maybe we should, have a goal setting meeting after town meeting and put that on the list and
Right.
see how it fares next to other projects. That would be my suggestion.
Sure. Okay, but if she needs to, does she need to do anything with this right now?
It's due, the application is due very shortly, which is why she wanted our input on what to apply for.
That's what I thought.
And I
read.
said that I would just run these ideas by you, but I thought we would probably think we should go for the sewer district planning money, because that's what we really need right
Yeah.
now.
I think it's one of those examples of, first things first. And we have some potential there for economic development, which in fact is gonna make other things happen throughout the town here, once some of the buildings are up and running. It's gonna make our ability to fund things a little bit easier, so I would suggest that we do what we can in order to facilitate that as soon as possible.
I mean, I would like to do both. I think the master plan as well, because that fits in. What do you do with the sewer district, and how does that fit in with the future growth opportunities? And that's why I'm thinking we need to update both. So I applaud, if we can get both done, that would be a good,
Were you suggesting that we should apply for funds for both?
for both, if we can do it.
Yeah, we should check with Katie and see if she thinks that's liable to be well viewed. I don't know. I don't know.
Just one caveat, whatever grant monies you would receive under this program have to be expended by the end of the calendar year.
Oh,
Okay.
Everything has to be spent by December 31st.
Then that puts the sewer thing right up front.
yeah.
End
And
of
the
discussion.
timeframe tells us.
So we've got 4 months, all right. But if there were other grants
Not the
that.
No, the
The
fiscal,
calendar year.
the
No,
calendar
I
year.
understand.
But even so, we would not really get rolling
Master
on the
plan would
master
take a little
plan,
bit
I think.
longer.
before-
But I'm anxious to do
Yeah.
that. We've been talking about it, and it's long past due,
Yeah.
so.
And I think that's something we can begin regardless of
Right,
this
we don't need the
process.
grant. Yeah, that's something we should do, because it's an updating process, not an
But the
initial.
sewer district is ideal for this program. If you read the heading, smart growth and regional collaboration, and both of those are going to be required for
That's right.
that area.
Okay. Thank you,
And they've
Laura.
already agreed with us once that it's smart growth. They gave us $750,000 for a light.
Correct.
That's great. Speaking, can I bring up, speaking of lights, the flashing light is up and running, and that's a great thing.
On Beale Street?
On Beale Street, yeah, and we talked about those speed bumps. Now that you're official town administrator, could you go take a look at that again and see, they had been lowered, but I think there had been some discussion about removing them once that light was up and running.
Correct. You took a vote several months ago that said that, in the spring,
Yeah.
when the light was up and running, you'd remove the speed bumps. So I'm operating under that pretense, I do intend to come back to you before we actually take them out to make sure that you haven't reconsidered.
No, well, it's just that there were some members of the public who were anxious to have a date, and that's what we told them, and I'm just anxious as we should get that date, not
Yeah.
forget that.
Well, one thing we should take into consideration is the time of year. Because if you get on there and try to remove them now, it's gonna have an adverse effect on the base of the road.
Well, the last time I discussed
It's
it.
not the right time to be even making repairs with
No, I
respect to
agree.
asphalt.
It came out of my follow-up as, I just want to get a date out there as to when we're thinking of.
I
not-
thought the plan was to put the top coat down on that next spring, and that the idea was to remove the bumps at that time. Is that, do I have that right?
That's correct.
Correct.
That's
The bumps
right.
cannot-
Whatever that is.
John's correct, and you're both, the bumps cannot come out until we can put asphalt down.
No,
Otherwise, we're just asking for a problem.
No, I agree. I just wanted to get the date. It came out of my follow-up, and I wanted to make sure it was scheduled.
Yes.
That's all. That's all. Great, okay. Selectmen reports?
I'm done.
Done?
I don't really have anything to offer.
You have lots to
It's an
offer,
offer.
John.
John?
Well, in terms of reports,
Oh.
no.
No, we, let's see, I think we've knocked off a lot of issues that have been hanging around for a long time, and I appreciate all the work that you all have done to do that. And, we've got some projects yet to start, so, as we've discussed this evening. So, it is 9:34, and I think I have nothing else to add. And I will entertain, if nobody else has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all, and have a pleasant good evening, and be safe tonight if you're out. Mother Nature's been tricking us lately, so come on forward. Good night, everyone.